What is the best game to play if you're new to Assassin's Creed? Well, as much as I'd like to just straight up tell you, it's not really that simple, as since 2007 there have been 13, soon to be 14, mainline titles, and the latest outing is very different from the original release 17 years ago. So it mostly depends on the kind of player you are. Do you like methodical gameplay, pre-stalking, finding clues, and assassinating your target from the shadows? Or do you prefer to ram your face into anything that moves and put it down for good? Well, luckily for you, there's something for everyone in this series, and today we'll find out which game is best for you personally. This video will be story spoiler free, but will contain mechanics and things that you can do in the games. But without messing around anymore, let's get right into it. Are you someone who wants to delve deep into the lore and stories of the worlds you play within? Then you might have to put up with a bit of jank and old school video game design. Now, while the best way to get the most out of the series' story and lore is to play them in release order, starting with 2007's Assassin's Creed, but it may not be the best gameplay wise. Now, I love the original game. For its time, it was groundbreaking and revolutionary. The story is immaculate. However, most people's criticisms of the game are that it can be pretty repetitive gameplay wise, and especially in the mission design, which can feel pretty gamey. I would personally say that it's worth it to get the story, but that all depends on how high your tolerance is for older games. The mission structure largely doesn't change for the whole game, but the things you do within each mission, especially the final parts, are different and all unique and exciting. If you stick to the main narrative, the game only takes around 15 hours, which is perfect for the story it tells. The parkour mechanics of AC1 are tight and leave room for a lot of skill expression, but it has a large learning curve. You will for sure be jumping off in all directions when you first take control of one of the coolest assassins in the series. However, if you stick with it and learn the ins and outs of the system, it can be truly rewarding. Combat and stealth are both pretty dated at this point, but are very cool nonetheless. Stealth is more about being socially invisible and feels great if you manage to pull off your assassinations in this manner. So if you're here for the overall lore and big picture story of AC, then I think the original game is probably the best place to start. However, if you're not fond of older games and the overall story doesn't mean much to you, then I'd maybe give this one a miss. So as much as I love the older games, the stealth is definitely different in those games compared to the more modern ones. So depending on the kind of player you are, you may want to start somewhere different. The older games, AC1 to Revelations, are all more suited to social stealth, blending in with crowds, sitting on benches, using tools and allies to help you infiltrate areas unseen, and using parkour to navigate the enemy placements. These games encourage you to hide in plain sight. So if you like that kind of gameplay, the first 4 games are a good place to start, if you can put up with older type games, that is. As we move on in the series becomes less about hiding in plain sight and more about just hiding full stop. While in the older games you could move through an area not killing every guard, but using distractions or deceptions to move through, the newer games kind of expect you to clear the area by killing everyone. You move through bushes or sneak around on rooftops more often and take out guards with tools and your hidden blade. Now, while all the games have different amounts of both styles, they are definitely gauged more towards a certain type of stealth. So if you like the more sneaking around completely out of sight style, killing everyone before your main target, then you may want to start with something like Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now this is probably a spicy take as the community is pretty split on this game. I liked Mirage because it really tried to take the series back to its stealth roots, but with all the new added features. There's also a lot of tools that can help you take out targets from a distance, disable nearby targets and distract them. It has unique black box missions which can lead to unique kills and feel really fun to do. I do have to add a little caveat though, and that is that the combat is completely terrible and boring in this game. Mirage was made by a smaller team and you can clearly see where they put their limited development time. It's into the stealth, the parkour, and the world itself of Baghdad. If you're here for the historical story of AC and don't care much for the other parts of the story, then I have a few options for you. There are a few games in the series that are just amazing for experiencing a historical period to the fullest. My first option is to play all 3 of the Ezio trilogy. Ezio is the majority of fans' favorite protagonist. He has 3 games, starting with Assassin's Creed 2, then Brotherhood, and finally Revelations. They contain a complete story that can be taken as a whole if you can ignore the overarching sci-fi elements. The first 2 games take you back to Renaissance Italy, and it is a pleasure to roam around this part of the world and experience life in Florence, Venice, and Rome, to name a few. There is still a bit of older game jank that you may have to put up with, but if you're okay with that, then this would be my first recommendation. The stories and characters are absolutely first class and some of my favorite games in the series. My second option would be Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which is still to this day one of the best pirate games ever made. Getting to experience the golden age of piracy is priceless, and the story and character arc of the main protagonist is one of the best in the series. History-wise, you get to experience all the things that happened in this era and visit many islands and towns. I would say the history is less impressive than the Ezio trilogy or my final recommendation in this section, but it's still pretty decent. My third and final recommendation for the history buffs is to go to ancient Egypt and play Assassin's Creed Origins. This game has very little of the sci-fi stuff and mostly sticks you in Egypt to ride camels, climb pyramids, discover ancient tombs, and meet all the important people of the time period. I don't want to spoil it, but trust me, it is fantastic. This game has many people's second favorite protagonist in the series and has an unbelievable voice acting performance which will send chills down your spine. Gameplay wise, this was the first RPG in the series. There are a few drawbacks to that, but in all honesty, it doesn't hurt this amazing game. Are you enjoying the video? Hitting that like button would really help me out. Thanks, I appreciate it a lot. If you're an RPG fan, then there are definitely a few options to choose from. The aforementioned Origins, which takes the series from an open world action game to a fully fledged RPG. I personally don't mind the combat, but that is most people's biggest complaint. However, Origins has a huge, beautiful map of Egypt with secrets, quests, and just awesome things to do in it. It has skill trees and gear upgrades galore. So if that sounds good to you, I'd recommend starting here, as this was the start of the soft reboot for the series, and the other parts of the story will make more sense starting here, rather than starting halfway through the older action-style games. If you really don't care about the series' overarching story and just want to do some mystical, crazy combat with teleporting and big flashy moves, then I'd recommend playing AC Odyssey. This game has almost nothing to do with Assassin's Creed, but it is a bunch of fun to run around ancient Greece being a demigod. It is definitely the furthest from the original games in terms of tone, gameplay, and almost everything really. The map, while largely being oceans, is gigantic and offers large islands to roam around finding gear and side quests to do. The main narrative also has some interesting twists and turns and the occasional choice that changes the ending you get. You also get a choice between two protagonists, male or female. I'd personally recommend Cassandra, as I don't really like Alexios' voice acting, but that's just me. So if you want to play a game as more of a god and influence the beautiful world of ancient Greece, then Odyssey is for you. I want to quickly mention the latest game, Shadows. Now at the time of writing, it is not yet released. However, it is looking to be a pretty big and fun RPG. So while I can't recommend it, having not played it, I'd consider it a possibility when starting your AC journey. Maybe check out my review that I make after completing the game. Future video plug. Nice. There are a few Assassin's Creed games that I would definitely not recommend as your first game in the series. Not because they're bad necessarily, but because they are just not suited to being the first game for many people. First of all, Valhalla. It's a very bloated game with about 20 hours of main story that should have been side content. It pads the runtime out just for the sake of keeping you playing, and it can be tedious. It also has a lot more of the sci-fi story and a continuation of an overarching story that won't make much sense to you if you're a first-time player. Unity is a game I love a lot, but man is it still broken to this day. It's obviously not as broken as release, but this is still an unfinished game, and I just don't think it's a good place to start. Its story is also lacking in many areas, and I just think it's better experienced with more knowledge of the series as a whole. Rogue is another game that just won't make much sense or hit the same way if you play it without playing the other games in the series, especially the ones that released before it. Gameplay is copy-pasted from Black Flag, and the story rarely relies on you being familiar with the overall story of the games to enjoy it. If I had to recommend just one game that would be the best for the largest amount of people, I think I'd probably go with Origins. It has a story that pulls you in, makes you care about its characters and outcomes. A beautiful world with many places you've always wanted to see and explore, and the gameplay is modern and fun for its entire main story. Overall, it's probably the safest place to start in this day and age, and I think will please the most people. Origins is also one of my favorites in the series and is loved by old fans and new. I hope this video was useful to you. Let me know how your first game goes down in the comment section and if you plan to play any more. I have lots of Assassin's Creed content on the channel, so make sure you subscribe not to miss any of it. Thank you to my one and only patron, Alex Applegate. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Sticks out.